The medical intuitive, Carly Vernon, says that in our hearts, there's a core place of purity. So I invite you to believe that that's true for yourself, because I think this leads to being a Sonsqua. So breathe into the core of your heart and know that you're touching your flame. It's like blowing on your flame of your soul. It's saying, I'm bigger than I know. And then you breathe in. So a Sonsqua would make sure that no people are hungry. The Sonsqua would make sure that the fish was divided, that there were stores put aside for the winter, that if strangers were coming, you're welcoming. Do you need food? Feel that place inside yourself and add the flame of your commitment to the coalitions, to the values, to the places that you hold dear. And in this moment, we are taking that role of rock, of foundation. We are bringing to flame again the flame of the Sonsqua and the Sachem, and the ones who made sure that we go forward for 7 generations. We are united.
Now I'd like to lead us in the Congregational Covenant. This is a portion of our newly revised covenant. And if you would read along with me, that would be wonderful. In this house, we covenant with one another to listen respectfully with an open mind and value our diversity as a source of our communal strength, to learn together and grow together, generously sharing our time, talent, and treasures, to celebrate the joys of discovery, embracing the fullest measure of our humanity, from the wonder of youth to the wisdom of age, to openly share our laughter and our tears, showing reverence for the divine in all that is.
At this moment, David and I want to really bring you some personal involvement. And this past summer was the 8th summer of the Wakumtuk Homeland Festival. It's just a wonder. Thanks to Nolan Bleeker, and thanks to people in this room. And this year, Evan Pritchard, who's I think been there every year, shared an intertribal song. I asked him if it was okay to learn it, and he helped. He wrote out all the words and all the melody. So I've been working on learning it. I want to do it first full out, and then slow it down so that if you like, we can sing together. I'll be unmasked. I would say probably keep your mask on, but may the joy of this song. So first we bring our hearts to this sense. Intertribal doesn't mean the 500 plus Native First Nations only, but however you understand your heritage, will you place yourself in this intertribal moment? I'm gonna back off the mic and do it full out. Okay. You way higher, hey, you way higher. You way higher, hey, you way higher. Way higher, hey, yo, way higher, hey, yo. You way high, yo, way. You way higher, hey, you way higher. You way higher, hey, you way higher. Way higher, hey, yo, way higher, hey, yo. You way high, your way. Okay, here's the first part. Yue haya, Yue haya. Say that with me. Yue haya, Yue haya. Let's say it again. Yue haya, Yue haya. Yue haya, Yue haya. Yue haya, Yue haya. It climbs. Yue haya, Yue haya. Yue haya, Yue haya. We haya, yo yo. We haya, yo yo. Repeat it with one yo at the end. We haya, yo. We haya, yo. Speaking it. We hey. We hey ya hey yo yo. We hey ya hey yo. We hey ya hey yo yo. We hey ya hey yo yo. We hey ya hey yo. We hey ya hey yo. You way high yo way. You way high yo way. That ending together. You way high yo way. Now just come into it, and I'll sing it slow at first. You way. So we start with you way higher and you way higher. Climbs. You way higher, you way higher. You way higher, you way higher, way higher. Way higher, hey yo yo. Way higher, hey yo. You way high, you way high, you way high, yo way. If you were a child in the circle, the words would wash over you, and somehow you'd find yourself starting to sing them. You way higher, hey, you way higher. You way higher, hey, you way higher. Way higher, hey, yo, yo, way higher, hey, yo, you. You way high, yo, way. Twice more. You way higher, hey, you way higher. You way higher, you way higher. It's true. Joy of healthy and mint. I wish I could pass this to everybody. Last time, again, placing ourselves in that circle. You way higher, hey, you way higher. You way higher, hey, you way higher. Way higher, hey, yo, yo. Way higher, hey, yo. You way high, yo, way. And now David will speak about the lessons of Mashalisk.
Thank you, Sarah, for that song. I've got to learn it from you. Listen a few more times, but it's going to be something that we will use a lot, I feel. So Sarah and I have been collaborating on looking into various stories and lessons from Mashalisk. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this person. I'll give you a quick thumbnail sketch of who Mashalisk was and still is, just the historical part. Mashalisk is a woman who was one of the last known women leaders in the valley here. We always hesitate about saying who was the last because people are still here. So it's really not very fair to call her the last Songskwa, meaning woman sachem. But through bits and pieces that we have found, mostly recorded by white antiquarian historians like George Sheldon or Thomas Pressey in their various histories, we know, as I said, bits and pieces about Mashalisk. We know that she had inherited lands that extended from basically what is now known as Sunderland all the way up through what's now known as Greenfield to the falls at Peskiomskat. And we know that she was basically one of the last holdouts, did not wish to cede her land. Her primary, what I call him, the son of the settler of Springfield. So the founder of Springfield was a William Pynchon. His son, John Pynchon, in the 1660s became an important figure in these parts. He had been contracted by the Massachusetts General Court to obtain land here in the valley. And he went about doing that. He went about getting people, tribal people, to sign deeds, which they did, some of which they had no real oversight or stewardship of. But nevertheless, it was a convenient Indian to get to put his mark or her mark on the deeds, so that the Massachusetts General Court would feel that was all fine and dandy and they could bring in the settlers. So Mashalisk, towards the end of her known existence here in the valley, would have placed her just before the horrific massacre that occurred at the falls in 1676. So let's say they were situating her in the mid-1660s, 1670s rather. She and her son, Wata Wolenskin, were living on an island, which I would place near the mouth of the Sawmill River over in Montague. That island's not there anymore, but people have found, underwater, have found artifacts and vestiges of what was likely the site. She was the hereditary steward of places like Nayokosik, Tomholisik, Masquamkasach. These places are lost to us. We don't know where they are. They probably have some new names, and I think that if they had those names I just mentioned going back thousands of years, that they would still answer those names if we only knew how to call out to them, how to find them. What occurred briefly then is that John Pynchon wanted to obtain the land from Sunderland to the falls. Mashalisk refused, would not sign off. What occurred, according to the historians I mentioned, is that her son fell into Pynchon's clutches. Pynchon managed to find a way to get Wata Wolenskin, Mashalisk's son, in a situation where Pynchon was able to put him in a Springfield jail. They say alcohol was involved, more than likely. That's the story that came down, that was written down by the historians, but we don't know. Regardless, the son was in Pynchon's clutches, and Pynchon had a reputation of sending Native Americans to the West Indies. That was a two-way street. People, through what they liked to think were just wars would obtain Native Americans as slaves, but they didn't keep them in New England, in the Northeast, because it would be too easy to escape. Kinfolk, kinship links, they knew the territory, so they came up with a diabolical plan. Native Americans would get sent to the West Indies, and Africans would be sent up to the Northeast. So that is what was a real fear in Mashalisk's mind. And so, as every mother would, although she was a Zonk squaw with a considerable power, she agreed to sign off to obtain her son's freedom. And in doing so, she included in her deed, you can still find it, it's in many history books, in exchange for a few large beaver skins and some wool coats and her son's freedom. She signed off the lands that I mentioned, including what we now call Mount Sugarloaf, which would have been and still is called Wequamps, where the hill drops off. The thing is that particular topographical feature contained in natives' minds a burden, and that was the burden of the greedy giant beaver. And I'll not go into that story. It is often told in this area now. But let's say that the natives often beseeched this giant greedy beaver to please move on so that their fields would no longer be flooded. The beaver refused, and they needed to call in the giant shapeshifter and land shaper, Hobomok. A huge battle occurred, and Hobomok slayed the beaver. The beaver sunk into the bottom of the lake and became petrified. Still see that now. You go down Route 5 and 10, check it out. You'll see, as you all know, being from here, you'll see the beaver's head and his body that extends right down through here past Poet Seat Tower to as far as Wissatinawag. But we feel that Mashalisk knew what she was doing in that, transferring that burden of greed to Pynchon. And in her deed, she transferred that to Pynchon and all of his heirs forever, which is coming to be known to some of us as one of the lessons. Native people know why and how, and Pynchon and all of his greed, of course, didn't know that, didn't care to know it. He was after beaver skins. Beaver ran out. He had to go farther and farther north, finding them, engaging more and more tribal people. So that's the historic Mashalisk. And as you can tell, Sarah and I are finding a lot of inspiration in what we would call the mystery or the spiritual Mashalisk. Her voice has been heard by some of us, and we, as she is becoming more and more known, she is also taking on a new meaning for us. Her voice is being heard through that story and through the fact that she resisted as long as she could when others had signed off cheaply and easily, even though they didn't even, what I would call, have stewardship over the land. So the pieces of her story have reached us, and some of us are taking that forward to try to explain to people in this area that this is a name that should be known. People know names of the raiders. They know Captain William Turner's name. They know Mosley's name. They know Jonathan Wells' name. But how many people think about Witamu, Monoko, Mashalisk. This is something that we need to continue to teach about. She also, we think, provides a lesson in the stewardship of the land. This is what we were talking about in the prayer of thankfulness, what we talk about, what we mentioned in the land acknowledgement. She cared for the land that she had stewardship over, lived in balance, as did her tribal members, lived in balance with that. We need to work to restore that balance. So that's another legacy or a lesson that comes from her. And then, of course, there is in all Native stories, there is a lesson to be learned. And in this case, it is the lesson of greed and selfishness. I was telling this story. I was invited by the Four Rivers Charter School to tell this story on top of Sugarloaf last week to 7th graders. And it was just fascinating because their task was to, after the story, was to figure out how that involved them and what was the lesson in that story. And it took a while because they were probing, finding vocabulary words, but finally some of them came up with, that beaver was selfish, he was greedy, and that's what we have to remember. And one of them even said, it's possible that those roles were changed. Maybe the beaver was a victim and not the people. So think about that. And that kind of sent me off down a new trail for a while. So I just want to share that with you. This story of Mashalisk and the beautiful music that Sarah is creating is becoming, after 400 years, is coming back to us. The voice is still here on Woolman Hill. The voice is still here on that ridgeline. The voice is still here in the valley here. So I'll leave you with that, acknowledging that there are enduring voices and enduring stories in our landscape, but you have to be ready to hear them. Question of stewardship, what I mentioned earlier, what have we done with what we have been given? And how will we heal and provide better stewardship in the future? We're still learning and we're still seeking and hearing the message that has come to us across the centuries. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for what you carry. For what you carry, for what you bring to us. The place along the spine of the great beaver is the place where Woolman Hill has been. I like to think about the Mashalisk and the other Pakantuk people who lived right there in what is now Woolman Hill. How many people have been to Woolman Hill, have been up Keats Road? So yes, you know that beloved place. People have said that when you come up to the top of the road, you feel like there's something extra. There's been a lot of prayer there. And so that prayer goes back. It's like seeds have been planted in that land. A woman during World War II, a Dutch woman, Antoinette Sprite, said, I want to help prevent future wars. And so she bought that land, the farm, and I always think that she did that in the spirit of carrying on the spirit of Mashalisk. Because when she gave it as a gift, 100 acres or more, to the Quakers for them to hold it in trust. Can you feel like there's something similar important going on? And so we want to give you that sense. I call it, let's see how to explain this. Marge Bruchak, who was a professor, an Abenaki professor, said that when she was up in the area of Canada, she met people who would talk about, you're a person from the Great Beaver Mountain. So that's what, if we were traveling, people would say, you're a person of the Great Beaver Mountain. I like to think, what could we also say, Mashalisk, you are still my leader. Isn't that an amazing way to feel into it? She's still guiding us. If you go and you sit poet's seat, or go to Weecroft's, now called Sugarloaf, or you're along the Connecticut, the Connecticut River, the Untitled River, try this thought when you're saying, Mashalisk walked here, she sat here, which was the island. It's just, I find it so exciting to bring her back and feel what her role would have felt like. So she would have wanted to have all of us be part of her inheritors, to inherit the wisdom that she wanted to live. And each of us in our own way is doing that. So the information in the song comes from walking, it comes from Howard Clark, who has 60,000 pages of research. It comes from also Abenaki professor Lisa Brooks and Marge. We sit in the place where you once were. We walk this mountain, that's for sure. We looked from this ledge. We followed the hawks. We sat on these beaver tail mountain rocks. And the wind says your legacy must never cease. We call to the wind your name, Mashalisk. We call to the wind your name, Mashalisk. So as we're feeling that legacy, Una and I then have held these seeds with young people, intergenerational journey camp. And in 1980, when Trapot was there, the first time I heard her name, it was just, her name was written on the wall in the conference house there. I just decided to go out and say, we know your name now, and call to her. So each year of camp, we've honored her. The refrain is, the wind says your legacy must never cease. And the words are written in your bulletin. If you'd like to try that part. And the wind says your legacy must never cease. We call to the wind your name, Mashalisk. We call to the wind your name, Mashalisk. As common as thievery exploded and climbed, you were one of the song squaws, and that turning tide, you lit the signal at the mountain top. The ancient fire must not stop, and the wind says your legacy must never cease. We call to the wind your name, Mashalisk. We call to the wind your name, Mashalisk. John Pynchon claimed a deed to the wind, your name, Mashalisk. We call to the wind, your name, Mashalisk. If you walk up the ridge from Woman Hill, you'll find 2 black stones. And this summer, in addition to journey campers creating stick houses, Eva Gibovic, close friend of Doug Harris, who made sure that the airport would not be extended and thereby carve away the graves, the sacred landscape. We learned something new. You're going to be hearing for the first time. We learned that the split rock there is a place where prayers would be put in the split. So it's that area is part of the sacred landscape. We also learned that there's this rock that has a basin. We've always looked, oh, rain collects there. Maybe it was a place of grounding. But Eva, when she saw that rock, she sat down. She got out her mapping equipment. She said, this rock on the Great Beaver Mountain connects exactly to the top of Porcupine Mountain, now called Mount Toby. So that means in the sacred landscape, when fires were lit, that went all the way through Heath and up to Canada, and then all the way down to the ocean, that I'm going to guess that Mashalisk would light that. Would light that fire. Feel that. Imagine you're there when the fire is lit once more. You lit the signal at the mountain top. The ancient fire must not stop. May we learn and draw near you. Is there a way to hear and see you? Take off the blankets of treachery and carry the real history. And the wind says your legacy must never cease. We call to the wind, your name, Mashalisk. We call to the wind, your name, Mashalisk. No one went hungry under your eye. No one abandoned when it's time to die. Makamtak Song Squad, diplomat show. May your life always be known. May your life always be known. And the wind says your legacy must never cease. We call to the wind, your name, Mashalisk. We call to the wind, your name, Mashalisk. How beautiful to hear your words. Thank you so much for joining me in the song story. Pass to Kate.
Every week, I want to thank once again Dan Tynan for being our tech crew, doing a wonderful job so that people not only here but out there are getting the word. But now is the opportunity to be generous. And we see this act of giving, of growing more generous in our hearts and in our actions as essential to our spiritual well-being. So we will now receive the morning's offering. And I do need at least one volunteer.
The offertory music is played on a Hawk Henry's flute, a Nipmuc man who has come to the Homeland Festival.
Individually and together, we are building a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, treasure, and talent, helps to make this grand vision real. Now is the time in our service, I believe, yes, for sharing joys and sorrows. So if you have a sorrow that needs the help of this community to carry it, or a joy so great you really want to share it, this is the time. So we don't expect announcements at this time, but we would love it if you are visiting, that you introduce yourselves and say hi. There will be an opportunity after the service to mingle. We're going to have some snacks out back, outside, so we can take off our masks or just wear your mask. Let's see. So basically, especially visitors, we welcome sharing of joys and sorrows. And I'll bring you the mic.
Kate and I planned that I would first make an announcement of Starseed in Savoy is a very special sanctuary. Today is the 33rd year, and I say a prayer for Satyena Ananda, who started Starseed, who has very severe Lyme, and so she's looking for new people who will come and help keep Starseed going. So for 33 days, we're saying prayers for Starseed and Satyena.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me, and thank you both, everybody, for your effort. My name is Una Collins. I was born here in Northampton, and I'm visiting from Seattle, from the Duwamish land, and on the Salish Sea. And I'd also just like to ask for prayers and thoughts to my stepmother and my partner's parents. All three are in the throes of illness of different kinds. And so they're all very strong and powerful people, and sometimes forget to ask for help from their community, so I'm doing it on their behalf. Thanks for having me. Oh, of course. Sure. I used to come here as a child. So I used to come often for Christmas, and I also remember being in a version of Sunday school downstairs at some point that I really enjoyed. I remember one Christmas having a very strong vision of sitting back there and looking up at this rafter and seeing angels for the very first time. That was a very strong memory, so I was kind of gazing up there. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. It's a good week for you to be back here again.
Good morning. My name is Bill Ashley. I've been in Springfield for only 2+ years, but my ancestry goes back to 1638 when Senator Finchie came out settlers, quote, settle, unquote, this area. I had some real joy. I missed the last 2 services because a practical matter, which was participating in show and tells for electric vehicles. 2 weeks ago up in Bennington, Vermont, and this last Sunday up in Nashville. So it's not that much we can do, perhaps personally, about climate disruption, but I've managed to find at least that.
Thank you, Bill.
So I'm Pam, and I just want to say thanks to so many people in this congregation. It looks thin, but it's thick. And we've been working climate justice and climate crisis and Indigenous living in the space of honoring Mother Earth and nature for a long time now. And I want to thank Kate Mason and the Interfaith Council for helping to host truly spectacular work on the new laws that have been set in Massachusetts, which is fabulous. And not only that, but there are so many of you, like Andrew Baker, who's stepping up to the plate and as a selectman. It's just, we're grateful, Sarah and David, and Dan Tynan for filming all this stuff on YouTube, and now we have a YouTube entry. And so it's continual. I mean, we've just had 23 energy committees meeting on climate crisis things on Zoom this past week. So it keeps on going, and this church has such a dynamic program in many, many ways. So blessings on you all.
And thank you, Pam. She's a real mover and shaker in the town.
Good morning, I'm Rob Peck. I'd like to light a candle of sorrow for my beloved sister Wendy Peck, who underwent a surgery, only to discover that the doctor messed up, and now she has to go for a second surgery. On the plus side, they do think this time things will work out, and it's at least not anything to make and I also want to light a candle of joy, because today's service reminded me of a gift of generosity that stayed with me for so long. I helped coordinate a conference in 2005. It was a national conference, and an attendee from Arizona thanked me for giving me a Native American flute, which I have treasured playing ever since, and was a joy to hear again today.
Thank you, Robert.
Good morning. My name is Terry Lurch. I live in a small town in California. I've been traveling with my dog. And that is a joy, seeing this big United States. I've never been to Massachusetts. I've been to the East Coast, New York City, big cities. It's lovely here. People are very friendly and kind, and I've never been to Unitarian Church. I'm a religious scientist and know about Unitarian. I was so excited to see the church this morning and decided to come. Thank you. Service was beautiful, and I think I'd like to light a candle for my friends and loved ones who have recently lost both pets who are their family and spouse, and just hold everyone in the world that's in sorrow and loving arms and gratitude and peace. So thank you so much.
A big welcome to you,
Terry.
Do we have a Zoom?
Yes, Joan Pillsbury asked that we keep in our thoughts and prayers Nancy Buchanan because she's ill. Having a little difficulty getting around, as I understand it. There'll be more information coming.
I believe Lori is on Zoom. Is she with us?
Yes, she is.
Yeah, could she tell us her sad news? Okay.
Would you like to say it?
Yeah, I will. Lori told me that she buried Sadie, her dog, a couple days ago. And she had traveled cross country a couple years ago with Sadie, stayed with Jennifer and Mel, and then went back home to Washington State. And, so I think losing her best friend is a big loss. And then let's light one more candle in our hearts for those unspoken joys and sorrows. Dan, could you lead us in the front of your hymnal, the words and music to Prayer for Friends, Prayer to Friends. It's in the front, it's an insert in your hymnal.
To this day I bring my life, born of hope, born of sand, yearning joy where now there's strife. All I have, all I am. Help me to see what I must see. Help me to be where I must be. Restless faith, abide till all are free. Fill my life, turn my hand.
As we close today, there's this sense that when you blow a candle out, the light doesn't die. It flies inside. So may you carry the flame of today's service. And I wanted to, just symbolically, if Una and David could join me on these stairs, and Kate as well, the four of us, so that something so beautiful Pammy said about that this is a long-standing congregation, that the things we're talking about, your congregation has been dedicated to. And actually, we made a prayer at the beginning about that to recognize. I know that last week, Sandra Boston taught the song from the Interfaith Council. We're not alone. We're not alone. We're not alone. We're not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. We're not alone. We're not alone. We're not alone. We're not alone. We carry the flame. Thank you for being here today. And now we get to gather, if you can stay. No. No, Ah. Thank you. Here's the recessional music.